The Stormbreaker Isles loomed in the distance, jagged peaks piercing a sky that churned with restless storm clouds. Each flash of lightning illuminated the rocky crags in ghostly light, as though the very land itself were alive with an ancient, pulsing energy. Waves crashed violently against the cliffs, sending salty mist into the air, and a cold wind screamed through the narrow channels between the towering formations. Evandra stood at the bow of their weathered ship, clutching her cloak tightly around her shoulders, and stared into the approaching storm with steely resolve. Brynn, her companion and stalwart friend, steadied herself on the slick deck. Her auburn hair was tied back, though strands had already escaped to lash at her face like fiery whips in the wind. "We're being watched," she said, her voice loud but calm against the roar of the sea. Her amber eyes scanned the skies as if expecting something, or someone, to emerge from the storm. Evandra followed her gaze, sensing an oppressive presence hanging over them, thick as the storm clouds overhead. The journey to the Isles had been perilous from the start, but nothing had prepared them for the raw power of this place. As another bolt of lightning cracked across the heavens, illuminating the sea in a flash of eerie brilliance, Evandra felt the weight of her purpose pressing heavily on her heart. They weren't here just to stop a natural disaster. They had come because the legends spoke of a test, a trial set by a higher power that would determine the fate of the Isles and all who dwelled there. Failure was not an option, but the cost of success was still unknown. The ship lurched suddenly as a monstrous wave rose before them, a wall of water that threatened to crush them beneath its fury. Evandra grabbed the railing, her knuckles whitening, and shouted to the crew, "Brace yourselves!" The sailors scrambled to secure the lines, their movements a chaotic dance of desperation. Brynn, still eerily calm, drew a small charm from around her neck, a ward against sea spirits, and whispered a prayer into the wind. The air grew thick with tension, and for a breathless moment it seemed as though the ocean itself had paused to listen. But just as the wave was about to crash down upon them, a strange, ethereal light shimmered across the water. The waves seemed to freeze, suspended in time, and then gently parted, allowing the ship to pass unharmed. Evandra's heart raced, and she exchanged a stunned glance with Brynn. Whatever force lay in wait within the Stormbreaker Isles had made its presence known, and they were only at the threshold of a far greater mystery. The ship scraped against the jagged rocks of the shore, its timbers groaning in protest. Evandra and Brynn disembarked carefully, their boots sinking into the wet, shifting sands. The howling wind and crashing waves were a constant reminder that nature was a formidable adversary here. Before them, the landscape of the Stormbreaker Isles spread like a labyrinth of treacherous cliffs and narrow, winding trails. Lightning illuminated twisted trees and boulders scarred by the elements. It felt as though the entire island held its breath, waiting to see if they were worthy of venturing further. Brynn clutched her warding charm tighter. "Do you feel that?" she asked, her voice barely carrying over the storm. Evandra nodded, her own senses prickling with unease. It wasn't just the storm pressing down on them. The island exuded a presence, like an ancient entity watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Every step they took seemed guided, almost as if the land itself were steering them toward their fate. "Stay close," Evandra said, drawing her blade as they approached a gnarled archway of rock, carved by centuries of wind and sea. Their first true test came sooner than expected. As they passed under the arch, a shadowy figure appeared, wreathed in mist and lightning. Its form shifted and twisted, never fully solid, but undeniably menacing. The creature's eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its voice echoed resonant and full of power. "Only the worthy may tread here," it intoned, the air thickening with its presence. Evandra swallowed hard, but kept her grip firm on her weapon. Brynn whispered a spell under her breath, her free hand glowing faintly with protective magic. The guardian spirit lunged, and Evandra met it head-on. The clash was a cacophony of steel meeting spectral force, with lightning splitting the sky above them. Brynn's protective spell created a barrier just in time, holding back the spirit's full wrath. But it was clear that brute force alone would not be enough. Evandra's mind raced, recalling stories of the island's trials and the riddles that tested not only one's strength, but also their wisdom. "There has to be another way!" Brynn shouted, her voice tinged with desperation as the spirit battered their defenses. Evandra took a breath, lowering her blade slightly. "We're not just here to fight," she called out, hoping the spirit could hear. "We seek to prove our worth." The creature paused, its form still swirling but no longer attacking. The storm seemed to quiet for a heartbeat, as if waiting for the spirit's judgment. A riddle formed on its lips, ancient words carried on the wind. "What cannot be held but binds stronger than iron." Evandra and Brynn exchanged a look, knowing that the answer to this test could decide their fate. The gnarled archway seemed to close in around them, each gust of wind carrying whispers in a language older than time. Evandra steadied her breathing, feeling the pulse of the island beneath her feet, each beat synced with the fury of the storm. The spectral guardian hovered before them, its eyes glowing with an intensity that threatened to pierce her very soul. "What cannot be held, but binds stronger than iron," it repeated, each syllable vibrating through the air with unearthly resonance. Brynn's protective barrier flickered under the strain, her magic wavering like a flame in the wind. Evandra closed her eyes, reaching deep into the well of her memories, seeking an answer that eluded her. Every legend, every tale she'd ever heard about the Stormbreaker Isles played through her mind. The sound of crashing waves and the crack of thunder threatened to drown her thoughts, but she held fast. "It's something intangible," she whispered to herself. Beside her, Brynn gritted her teeth, sweat beading on her brow as she fought to keep the barrier strong. The guardian spirit leaned closer, its form shifting and swirling, an embodiment of the storm itself. Just when the weight of the question seemed too great, Evandra's eyes snapped open. "A promise," she declared, her voice steady and sure. The spirit's form wavered, and for a moment, the storm seemed to pause. The island held its breath, waiting for the spirit's judgment. The glowing eyes softened, and the spectral being drew back, its misty edges dissolving into the air. "You are worthy," it intoned, and the pressure in the atmosphere lessened, as though a great weight had been lifted. The archway transformed, the rock reshaping itself into a passage leading deeper into the heart of the island. But their relief was short-lived. As they stepped forward, the ground trembled and the storm roared back to life, angrier and more alive than before. Evandra and Brynn exchanged a panicked glance. The trial was far from over. The island, awakened and aware, was not finished with them yet. Rocks tumbled from the cliffs, and the wind screamed through the chasms, as if the isles themselves were testing their resolve. "Move!" Evandra shouted, grabbing Brynn's hand as they sprinted deeper into the maze of cliffs and shadowed paths, chased by the storm's wrath. Their path twisted and turned, each corner revealing new perils. The ground beneath them cracked, forming fissures that glowed with a strange blue light. Shadows shifted along the cliffs, taking on shapes that whispered threats and promises of doom. Yet through it all, Evandra held on to the belief that they could pass whatever trials lay ahead. The true test of the Isles was not just their strength or wit, but the bond that kept them moving forward, bound by something stronger than the storms themselves. Evandra and Brynn stumbled to a brief halt, breathless and battered from their frantic escape. The cliffs around them loomed higher, casting shadows that seemed almost alive. The fissures in the ground pulsed with an eerie blue light, but the storm's fury had abated slightly, as if granting them a temporary reprieve. Evandra's heart still pounded in her chest, the riddle's victory overshadowed by the island's unyielding trials. She exchanged a look with Brynn, whose exhaustion was evident, but whose determination burned brighter still. "Did we pass the test?" Brynn asked, voice trembling as she clutched her warding charm. Before Evandra could respond, the ground beneath them shifted, revealing a hidden stairway carved into the rock. The blue glow of the fissures coalesced, forming a path that led downward into the heart of the island. "Only one way to find out," Evandra replied, steeling herself for whatever awaited them below. She took the first step, feeling the weight of destiny press heavily upon her shoulders. The stairway spiraled deep into the earth, and the air grew colder with each step. Strange carvings lined the walls, depicting scenes of the island's ancient guardians and the trials they had imposed on those who sought the power hidden within. Evandra traced her fingers along the stone, feeling an inexplicable connection to the images, as if they whispered secrets meant only for her. The storm's distant rumble echoed through the caverns, a reminder that time was still slipping away. At the bottom, they emerged into a vast chamber lit by floating ethereal flames. In the center stood an altar carved from obsidian, glowing with a soft, pulsating light. A figure awaited them there, draped in flowing robes that shimmered like midnight. Its face was obscured by a hood, but its voice resonated with the power of the Isles themselves. "You have come far," the figure intoned, each word echoing through the chamber. "But the final choice will test your true strength." Evandra and Brynn stood side by side, knowing that their bond would be tested once more. The robed figure raised a hand and images materialized around them, visions of what could be, of futures that teetered on the edge of triumph or ruin. "One must choose to make the ultimate sacrifice," the figure said, its voice solemn. "Only then will the cycle be broken and the Isle saved." The chamber fell silent, the weight of destiny pressing down on them as they prepared to face the final trial. Evandra's breath caught in her throat as the robed figure's words settled over them like a heavy shroud. "Only then will the cycle be broken," it repeated, gesturing toward the obsidian altar. The visions swirling around them showed futures both wondrous and grim, one where the Isles flourished under a calm sky, another where endless storms ravaged the land, and yet another where darkness swallowed everything whole. Brynn stepped closer to Evandra, her hand trembling as she reached for her friend. "We can't let it end in ruin," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. Evandra's mind raced. The test had never been about strength or cleverness alone. It demanded sacrifice, a show of true dedication to the Isles and their people. She looked into Brynn's eyes and saw the bond they had forged through countless trials. The promise that had bound them here was more than just words. It was a silent oath, stronger than iron. "No," Evandra said, a quiet resolve settling over her. "We won't choose alone." She turned to the robed figure. "We offer our promise, not our lives. A promise to guard the Isles and guide them, whatever the cost." The figure paused, as if weighing her words. The chamber fell silent, and the ethereal flames flickered uncertainly. Slowly, the robed being lowered its hands, and the swirling visions began to dissolve into light. "You understand," it murmured, almost with a note of approval. "A sacrifice of duty, not death." The altar's glow shifted, becoming a gentle golden light that spread warmth throughout the chamber. The storm above the Isles began to calm, the howling wind fading to a whisper as the sky slowly cleared, revealing the stars. Brynn released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, tears shining in her eyes. Evandra's heart felt lighter, though she knew their promise would be a lifelong commitment. The robed figure's form began to dissipate, leaving behind a lingering presence of ancient wisdom. "The Isles are yours to guide," it said, its voice echoing softly as it vanished. Evandra and Brynn stood together, the weight of their oath heavy but no longer oppressive. They had saved the Isles, not through force, but through a bond stronger than any storm. As they emerged from the depths of the island, the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold. The sea was calm, and the jagged cliffs seemed less menacing in the morning glow. Evandra took Brynn's hand, a silent acknowledgement of the trials they had faced and the new ones yet to come. The Stormbreaker Isles had tested them and in the end accepted their vow. Together they would ensure the promise was kept, protecting the land from future perils. A new day had begun, one full of hope and the enduring strength of friendship.